Turning now to the Texas race for U.S. Senate. Ken Paxton is now blaming incumbent John Cornyn for the national debt. The national debt has been a Republican concern for years, but the blame is often put on Democrats. But last week, Paxton pointed out the debt has grown by over $30 trillion since Cornyn took office in 2002. In response, Cornyn's campaign brushed off the claims and returned with an attack over the whistleblowers Paxton's office was forced to pay out last year. And the Democratic congressional campaign is adding 2 Texas races to its target list. That means they'll be boosting funding and campaign support to districts 15 and 35, where Democratic candidates Bobby Polito and Johnny Garcia are running. Both districts were redrawn last year to give Republicans an added advantage, but a Latino backlash to President Trump's immigration policies could put the races back in play. To dive deeper into these headlines and more, we're joined tonight by our political analyst and the founder of the Quorum Report, Harvey Kronberg. Harvey, welcome back. Thanks for joining us virtually.
Always a pleasure to be with you, James.
All right, Harvey. So the DCCC announced that it's added 2 more Texas seats to its Red to Blue program. We talked about that. Texas 15 in South Texas, Texas 35 in the San Antonio area, where they're supporting Johnny Garcia in the San Antonio area. What do you make of this aggressive move by the Democrats?
Well, I think it's almost a given that anything south of I-10 is going to be open territory for Democrats. In essentially 18 months, President Trump has annihilated all of the outreach efforts made by the Republican Party of Texas and the Republican operatives to build a base in South Texas, both through overly aggressive ICE actions and by essentially a very harsh voice towards Latinos. They initially supported President Trump over issues like inflation. They also opposed the massive waves of undocumented workers. That has all been brushed aside now by the current level of inflation and the fact that he's essentially betrayed his promises to Latinos.
Interesting. But Harvey, I do want to point out Johnny Garcia hasn't even won his runoff yet. He's in a runoff with Maureen Galindo, a more progressive candidate. But what does that say about the kind of candidate that the DCCC wants to see in that race?
Well, I think that she may be out of step culturally. Progressive Democrats are also much more culturally progressive, which doesn't necessarily play well with more traditional Latino voters. He comes from law enforcement background, and I think they're making the bet that he's going to be more acceptable, more palatable to a broader base of swing Latino voters.
All right, and Ken Paxton has a new attack line against John Cornyn in the Senate race, as you just heard there. He's blaming the incumbent senator for letting the national debt balloon since going into office. Does he have a point, Harvey?
Not really. That's one of the more laughable lines I've heard. What's really interesting, though, is that, of course, Cornyn turned his guns back on all of the, shall we say, ethical quagmires surrounding Attorney General Ken Paxton. But what's gone unsaid, essentially, is neither one has mentioned President Trump. President Trump's 2 terms have been largely responsible for that massive increase in the national debt, and neither Paxton is referring to it nor Cornyn in his counter assault. So the president's role is essentially being ignored, and I think it's pretty self-evident how spurious this accusation is.
All right, and lastly, Harvey, your publication took note of the fact that the governor's top advisor issued a warning to lobbyists that if they oppose Governor Abbott's property tax plan, his top priority, they may find themselves out of favor next session. We've got a minute left. Harvey, what's going on there?
It's more than out of favor. He's threatening their employment for advocating on behalf of their clients. Threats and intimidation are the currency of politics, and especially in Texas politics. But we've rarely seen anybody put in print what could be labeled official oppression, threatening your livelihood if you oppose the governor. It's really setting a new trend, and frankly, it's both Dave Carney, the consultant, and Greg Abbott channeling their inner Donald Trump, thinking that this kind of overt threats can win the day with what essentially is a really frivolous property tax proposal. That is to eliminate the property tax essentially based on surpluses, at the same time that serious people are beginning to think we may have a budget shortfall going into this next session.
All right, Harvey. Well, Texas politics is a full contact sport. Thanks for updating us on that. That's Harvey Kronberg. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure.